والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I greet everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We had to do it 2 times inside. We're going to have to do it again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So you guys thought probably this talk was going to be in Arabic, right? But we won't. We're going to do it in English, inshallah. Thank you all very dearly for joining us today. I am very excited. I'm very happy about our event tonight. Our event is entitled, Why Are So Many Hispanic People Accepting Islam? And we're very honored on top of that because we have 4 people here, 4 of our brothers and sisters that actually accepted Islam, some a few years ago, some even more than that. And they're going to share their journey to Islam and also try to tackle this question, inshallah. So a little bit of a format of how we're going to proceed, if it's okay. That is that we're going to talk about, we have about a few questions that we're going to ask everyone here, our panelists. And then once that is finished, we're going to have open QA session, meaning questions. I would love it if everyone in here can maybe ask a question or 2, if we have the time. Not everyone, but if you'd like to. What I would suggest is make sure that you folks write the question down so you don't forget it. And this way, at the end, when we do have the QA section and session, you can just kind of raise your hand and then answer the question or ask the question at that time. Secondly, I just want to get a little bit of a head count. How many maybe new Muslims do we have in attendance or converts to Islam? If you can just raise your hand for me. Okay, so a really good percentage, including our 4 panelists over here as well. Do we have any non-Muslim guests here today visiting us? Just if you can raise your hands for me, I would really appreciate it. Okay, perfect. So a good amount of non-Muslim guests. I want to welcome you here to the Islamic Institute of Orange County. Is this your first time here at the mosque? First time? Okay, perfect. Welcome. We're really honored and happy to have you here. And I promise you, you won't be taken hostage. All right, good. We're going to have to shake it up a little bit, right? I'm just joking around. Because we're on camera, I have to say we're just joking, right? So, great. So, okay, so let's continue with this because we have, we don't have too much time, but we want to make sure that we can tackle this question. What we have here is, I'm going to start with my right-hand side. We have us joining today is Sister Wanda, Sister Zara on the right. On the left here, Brother Isa and Brother Kenny. These are our 4 speakers here, part of our community here as well. And they're going to try to tackle these questions that we have for them, inshallah, God willing. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question that I think I want to ask on behalf of the community, and I'll start here on my right with Sister Wanda, is if you can briefly talk to us about your journey to Islam. Now, I know it's not doing justice to the topic to ask you to do it in a few minutes, and I apologize for that. But if you can maybe summarize in a few minutes your journey to Islam so we have a foundation, then maybe we can kind of lift off from there. I should stay away from these terms, right? So, okay, no problem, inshallah. Sister Wanda.
Alhamdulillah, I truly believe that. First of all, I want to say salam alaikum, and I'm Puerto Rican from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was born in Puerto Rico, and the city is called San Juan. I've been Muslim for 15 years. Alhamdulillah, I converted in 2001. The first thing I want to say is I'm a true believer of guidance comes from God, and every person that is chosen by God is a special person. Every single time somebody makes shahada, converts to Islam, I always say you're special because God chose you out of all your family to be Muslim. Thanks to God for that. And my story is very long, but I try to shorten it, alhamdulillah. When I converted to Islam, I was in high school. I had a group of high school friends. They were Somalian. Three of them, they became really close to me. I was taking a summer program, and I met them there. They were wearing like full hijab and everything, and I was asking them, like, why are you wearing this? Is this your culture? And they said, no, it's our religion. And they explained to me about Islam. Coming from a single mother, she worked 2 jobs. I grew up in a very, like you could say the projects wasn't a good neighborhood. I was exposed to drugs and alcohol at a very young age, maybe by 11 years old. And I had a really tough background. My mom, she struggled really hard to raise us, but she did her best. And I feel like Islam brought me that structure that I needed in my life to show me the right way. Like wake up in the morning, you do your prayer, and it just kind of showed me to be a better person, to stop doing things that were not good for me in my life. So alhamdulillah, these sisters that were my high school friends, they became my best friends. They became very close to me. They invited me to their house, and everything that they did was amazing to me. Like they would have, each of them, there are 7 sisters and 2 brothers. They live in like they're very humble people. They lived in a really small 2-bedroom apartment. And each of the sisters had her role. Like one would wash the dishes, one would do the laundry, one would cook. You know, each of them had their, one would clean the room. And they would wake up early, do their prayer. They would do their duties that they had to do. And then they would all cook together. Then the dad would come home from work. And they would all sit in a circle, like a big circle, like the whole family. They put the food on the floor, and they would all eat. And they would, you know, at the same time, I thought that was beautiful because for us, because my mom was such a hardworking mom, we only ate together as a family like once a year, like on Christmas or Thanksgiving, that was it. So I saw them like every night, they would eat together, they would have breakfast together. They were a very united family, a very humble family. Due to the fact that I had converted during a couple months before September 11th, there was a lot of misconceptions in that year that my mom had a really hard time with me converting to Islam. When I first converted, I converted with my best friend, and she gave me shahada. And then after that, I went to the local masjid nearby, and I made shahada with the imam there. And my mom had a hard time dealing with that. It took her a couple years. So the neighbors of my best friend, they kind of took me in. And it was the same imam who did my shahada at the masjid. His wife just told me that I could stay with them for a year until I stabilized my life and got a job. I was only 16 at that time. I tried to gain some stability, and my mom just, she just needed some more understanding of it. So alhamdulillah, they were like my mentors. They taught me everything. I call them my Muslim parents until now. We have a very close bond. I love them so much. And alhamdulillah, I feel like Islam brought me, even when I was in high school, a lot of my high school teachers would tell my friends like, wow, Wanda, she's doing such a good job. We're so happy that you showed her this religion because now she has A's and B's and she's only ever gotten D's or F's. So now her grades have gotten a lot better and she's behaving in school. She's not fighting anymore. I wasn't as aggressive as I used to be. So like I learned, you know, the structure and discipline, and I learned to actually do my homework basically. So alhamdulillah, I'm very grateful that God guided me at such a young age because I was able to adapt to a lot of the Islamic customs and things like that. So basically, that's it. Alhamdulillah.
Very nice. Thank you so much. So you said almost about 15 years ago?
15 years, yeah.
2001. In high school?
In high school, yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Some high school
And you know,
friends.
this is something, just for our community, this is something that we're finding as well today, that many people within a high school setting, they're investigating their purpose of life. What is it all about? And they start to research even before they get to college. And some of them being, you know, coming to Islam and asking questions here at the mosque. So this is something very beautiful. And so for those of us that have maybe children or kids at the high school level, they should be very proud to be Muslims and to share this beautiful message, inshallah. So, okay, Sister Zara, if I can ask you the same question, if you can just briefly tell us about your journey to Islam, we would really appreciate it.
Sure. My journey was a typical one. I pretty much searched for fulfillment in any way which I could. And I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and I never really had a true attachment to that faith or that God. I pretty much gave my back to, you know, that God because that promise of wanting to feel at peace never came. So I blamed that God for everything that went wrong in my life. And I had an excuse because I felt like, well, you know what, I didn't have a chance. I just grew up this way. And since I grew up with that mentality, I was more of a, what can I get out of you, and then kind of like run you over on top of that. You know, I grew up very selfish, very narcissistic, never had any compassion towards others. It was always about me. And unfortunately, as I grew up older, I acquired a lot. Yes, a lot of successes, financial savings, notoriety through jobs. You know, I held very high positions, but all of it, nothing ever brought me that fulfillment that I was searching for. You know, it was empty. You know, my heart was cold, and it kept only growing much colder. So what I ended up doing is searching it in other ways. So I drank a lot. I partied a lot. You know, I had a 10-year, almost 15-year eating disorder for a very long time that I struggled with. And towards the end, I did a lot of drugs. And it got to a certain point where I reached my lowest lows. My ego and my pride had taken me down to a road that I no longer knew who I was. And it had to take me to a certain, time where I felt so empty, and at the time I was dating, a former Muslim, wasn't a practicing Muslim, and troubled as I was, but he had one thing that I admired from him, is when he would talk about Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had that love for Allah that no matter what he did, it was always there, and I wanted that love. And I did not know how to get it, but I knew that, okay, maybe Islam had some sort of way for me to get out of it, some sort of hope. It gave me a way to get out of my situation. And I got to a certain point where I ended up crashing and burning, through doing so many drugs. I ended up losing it all. I lost my daughter, I lost my savings, money, my job. I reached to a point where my ego and my pride was I couldn't get back up again. And not even the love for my daughter could get me out of this kind of like self-deprecating, just life that I was leading. And I had to get to a certain position where I literally, once I had lost it all, I got on my hands and knees, and at that point, I put, my head on the ground, and at that point, I did not know that was sujood position at all. And I started sobbing, and I started crying out to Allah, and I asked Allah, if you are the true, God, if this is really where I need to go, show me. Get me out of this position, get me out of this environment. Get me into a place where I can, show me the understanding, and I kid you not, 2 weeks later, I was in a treatment facility, my bills were paid, I was moved out, and everything was taken care of. I do not know how it happened, but it just happened. And I'd say like 3 months later, I got to a position where I realized that I didn't need treatment. I didn't need their program, I didn't need their God. I just did, what they kind of like AA and meetings and all that kind of stuff. I needed Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I needed Him. And I realized after I had gone through that, through all of that changes in my life, that Allah had answered my prayer. I got to a position where I was too egotistical and too prideful, too arrogant to see it if it was before, because I had gotten to a place where everything needed to be stripped away from me. It just had to. And everything had to. And then that's when I realized, oh my gosh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had it planned. Everything had to happen for a reason, because if I didn't lose it all, if I didn't get to that point where I reached a point of desperation, I wouldn't have searched for anything higher than myself. I just wouldn't. And so that's when I realized, oh my God, subhanAllah, all of it had to happen, the pain, the suffering. And then when I had my daughter back in my arms again, that moment when I knew everything was back, that's when I took my shahada. And it was really late at night. And I kid you not, the feeling that overcame me was a feeling of that loss. Everything went away. It's almost like Allah came in and He coated my heart into a place of peace and serenity and understanding. And once I reached that place, my life changed. It changed for the better. Of course, with its setbacks, with everything kind of going on and family and so forth. But it changed to the better. I had a purpose. I'm a Muslim, and I took that with pride. And I'm special. I'm special in Allah's eyes. And He picked me out of so many people to be Muslim. And so I took that with a huge responsibility to be the best Muslim I can be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I tried my best to, just to be that best Muslim I can be. And today I'm sober, I'm here and I'm alive. If it wasn't for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Islam and the Quran, I would be dead. I would be dead today. And I know it. I was going down a road that was just too fast. And alhamdulillah, I'm here, I'm sober, and I'm alive, and I cannot thank Islam and Allah for everything, the gifts that He's given me. I have a purpose now. Alhamdulillah, subhanAllah.
May Allah bless you. 2 points I want to quickly, yes, that's very deep, inshallah. May Allah bless you. You mentioned 2 things before I pass it on here to Brother Isa. And this is something I think we should know from our community here as well, that, when somebody's really looking for guidance, and direction in life. And I think many people that accept Islam, they come to Islam, they can share a similar story, that somewhere along the line they reached out to the Creator. Sincerely, this is the prerequisite, sincerely reaching out to God and asking Him for guidance. In this case, Sister Zara, not even knowing that she was in a position as part of the prayer, right? The sujood, the prostration, when your face is to the floor, and she was basically asking for guidance. Many people, many new Muslims or converts to Islam, they share that same experience. That's amazing. So that's something that reminds all Muslims, not just someone who's a new Muslim. All Muslims, when you're sincere and you're reaching out to Allah with sincerity, Allah will respond. It might take some time because He's testing you, but the response will be there. And the second thing, if you don't mind me asking, Sister Zara, where are you originally from? Or your parents, if you don't mind?
I'm Central American, Costa Rican.
Costa Rican, okay.
So both my parents are from Costa Rica.
Okay,
so.
perfect. So Puerto Rico and Costa Rica here, inshallah. So we try to give a little balance to the Hispanic community here, inshallah, right? I'm going to pass it over here to my left. This is Brother Isa. And Brother Isa, actually, I was really honored and privileged to actually meet Brother Isa a few months ago here, actually, in the lobby of our mosque. And one of the brothers from our community, a very blessed and very beautiful brother, he came up to me and he introduced me to Brother Isa, who had and I was just, from the beginning, from the moment I met the brother, he just has a big heart, right? Big heart, and he's always wanting to give back. And if you see some of the things that he's gone through in life, you would really appreciate, subhanAllah, just being a Muslim. So I don't want to give your story away too much. I was just very touched with his story. So Brother Isa, if I can have you just maybe share your journey to Islam with us in a few minutes, I would really appreciate it.
Alhamdulillah. I'd like to begin with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. First of all, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon all of you. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I'd like to first begin with my life before Islam. My life before Islam, I'm very blessed and very grateful to be a Muslim today. And my life before Islam consisted of becoming a father at a young age. I came from San Bernardino County, and I became a father at a young age and grew up in San Bernardino County and began doing drugs and living a selfish lifestyle. I started off smoking marijuana, doing speed, coke, heroin, you name it, I did it. But alhamdulillah, you know, I'm blessed to be a Muslim today. I've been a Muslim now for about 6 years, alhamdulillah. And during my life of doing drugs and living that lifestyle, I was hustling for money. My hustling for money led to me doing robberies, doing armed robberies at stores, hitting safes. And that was the lifestyle that led to my imprisonment. I was sentenced to 15 years in prison, state prison. And upon being in prison, I picked up 5 more years. And 17 years later, I was released, and I'm here today, and I'm blessed to be able to be here with you guys today. And I thank the brother for inviting me to this program so that I can speak and let everyone know my story, alhamdulillah. My journey to Islam started in prison, and I came to a point in my life where I was praying for guidance. And I was a Christian before I became Muslim, so every time I prayed for guidance. And lo and behold, Allah placed me with a Muslim to be my cellmate. A cellmate is one that you live with within the prison walls. And he invited me to go to Ramadan, he invited me to fast, so I accepted. And I didn't become Muslim during this Ramadan, but I was blessed to be able to memorize the Al-Fatiha, and that never left me. So 2 years later, I went to another prison, and upon arriving to that prison, I seen brothers that I knew there from other places, and they invited me again to come, and it was Ramadan again. So they said, why don't you come down over here and coming in, join the festivities of Ramadan. So I accepted, and I kept going to Juma every time, and I was going to Talim, I was learning with the brothers, and finally, one day I walked in, and they were doing Juma, and I heard the Adhan, and that is when Allah opened my heart to Islam, and I'm very grateful for that. So I knew upon that time I began crying, everything, and I knew that Allah had finally guided me to where I needed to be, inshallah. So like 2 weeks later, I ended up taking my Shahada, and that is my journey to Islam. And I would just like to say that I'm blessed to be here, and I thank you guys for taking your time out to be able to hear my story today, inshallah. And I'm originally from Ontario, California.
So again, you'll find a common denominator, and that's searching for guidance, right? You'll find it with all of our speakers here and those that you might know as new Muslims. Just to clarify, so Brother Isa, you did 17 years in state prison.
17 years in state prison.
SubhanAllah. 17 years straight. That's a long time. That's a long time, inshallah.
I've been blessed to be out here now for 2 years. I'm no longer on parole. I work for Toys R Us warehouse, alhamdulillah, and I have no background. Being that I was down so long, nothing on my background comes up, alhamdulillah.
May Allah bless you. Also, just as a reminder for our community, and I'm talking in the context of new Muslims and converts to Islam. Many a times, we're looking for jobs, we're looking for employment. So for our community here and any community that's watching, if you're in a position to maybe hire someone, or you're in the management level where you can kind of assist the community, do try to assist. Because we have many people that have great traits and qualities and things that they can bring to the corporate field, but we just need somebody to kind of assist and help. So if you have that position, you can help in any way, that'll be great, inshallah. Also, I just want to thank everyone who's watching actually live stream right now. We have a good amount of number of people watching us live stream. So for those of you that had you wanted others to come with you, they couldn't make it, you can send them the link. If you want to know, if you go to YouTube, just put in IIOC TV and you'll see it live. So in case if you want to send that link to anyone, you're most welcome to do so. Kenny, how are you doing? Alhamdulillah. Yes, just hold it down for about a few seconds. Kenny, for those of you, if you don't know Kenny, Kenny is part and parcel, as the whole, our family is here, but Kenny is very special, as everyone is very special, right? But he's helping in the California Islamic University. He's helping in our outreach department. He's helping with the youth over here. Actually, he's supposed to be mentoring the youth just a little bit before this event. He was mentoring the youth, right? So he's one of those that really understands the message of Islam. That is that it's not only theoretical. It's what? It's practical. There's application to it, right? And this is something I think, and I remind myself, I'm in the same boat, we forget sometimes. We just read and we read and we read, but we don't apply what we read and what we understand. Hopefully today we'll all understand a little bit more. So Kenny, if you don't mind, again, I know I can't do justice to the topic by asking you in a few minutes, but if you can just share with us your journey to Islam, that'll be great.
Testing, it works.
Budget cuts, budget cuts. So.
Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, I wanted to start first with my background. I wanted to start first with my background. So I am a Mexican American, and my family is from South Mexico, Guerrero. It's in the southern part of Mexico, specifically from Acapulco. That's where my background and my family is from. So my journey to Islam, briefly, because we don't have too much time. So my brief summary of
I'm timing you.
my brief summary of my journey to Islam. Well, I grew up in a Catholic household, and my parents always encouraged to learn Catholicism and learn my religion. And when I was younger, I would always go to church. Every Sunday we would go to church, especially on holidays like Easter and Christmas. and we would always go to church, and that was emphasized by my mother. My mother always encouraged me to go to church, and my religious, she even emphasized religious education. So I went through catechism, and I went through my first communion and confirmation. So what that is when you learn about the Old Testament, you learn about the prophets, you learn about Jesus and the Gospels. So that was my religious education. And confirmation is where you take where you confess yourself, you learn your prayer, and you confess yourself in front of the priest. So when I was younger, one specific point is when I was younger is I had to take I had to do my confession. You have to confess yourself to the priest about your sins. And I remember specifically this experience that I was talking to the priest, and I was confessing myself, and I had questions before I confessed myself. I was like, one of the first questions was like, why do I need to confess myself to you? You know, can I just do it to God?
That's a pretty good question.
And I was a little kid, you know. So he said, oh, you know, I'm like a judge, and I had other questions like, why is there idols in the church? You know, like isn't this against the Bible? And he said, no, son, just believe. And that was another thing. And the third question that I had to the priest was, like, why is Jesus white when it says in the Bible he had bronze skin and wool hair? So those questions he didn't really answer them. So that was my religious education. And fast forward, it was my first year in college, and I had taken a lot of courses. I had taken like world religions, taken philosophy, history, taken all these courses, and I questioned my beliefs, and I really wanted to sincerely know truth. So I told myself, I'm really going to search for truth, and if I sincerely find it, I'm going to accept it. Sincerely find it, I'm going to accept it. So it was my second year in college, and I was running late to class. And as I was going to class, I saw this person walking towards me, and I squinted to see who that person was, because that person looked so familiar. And that person was my friend from 5th grade. Her name's Monica. And what I noticed was she was wearing a hijab. And I was like, man, I know that person, but that person's wearing a scarf. And I knew she was Muslim because I knew that Muslims wear scarves, wear hijabs. So we caught up briefly, and then I had to go to class. And she introduced me to her beautiful family and her husband. And fast forward, she introduced me to Sheikh Mustafa Umar. He's at the time he was in Corona, and I was in Corona. Corona is in the Inland Empire, for those of the OC people that don't know. And I was living in North Corona, and I got introduced to Sheikh Mustafa, and Sheikh Mustafa gave me some books. I did some research, and I decided to take my shahada, and alhamdulillah, I'm blessed to be Muslim. So that's a brief journey to Islam.
Thank you so much, Mel. You know, since we're yes, alhamdulillah, not all at one time, huh? Don't jump to congratulations. Since we're on you, if you don't mind, now the main topic that we have today is why are so many Hispanic people accepting Islam? I wanted to ask you, if that's okay, your opinion, because it's not really a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Why do you feel? And this is something for the community, this is something we're finding not just here but nationwide, many Hispanic people accepting Islam. So we want to kind of try to tackle this question. So Kenny, if I can just ask you if you can maybe share your thoughts on this question, then I can maybe ask
sounds
the rest
good.
of the panelists.
So why are so many Hispanics converting to Islam? This is the hefty question. So my answer, according to some personal experience and some reflections, I think that 3 reasons that I've concluded. And first reason is Hispanics have a strong sense of belief in God. Second reason is a lot of Islamic qualities, you could say language, culture, or you can even argue morality is part of the Hispanic culture. And the third is that Islam just makes sense. So on the first point, Hispanics have a strong sense of belief in God. So I think that Hispanics have a strong sense of belief in God that's not shrouded by skepticism or doubt as Americans have. And I remember when I was younger, I remember my mother would always, before I left the house, she would always do the cross. So what that is for those people that aren't familiar with Catholic religion, in Catholicism, you do the cross. You do it in front of your, I don't want to do it, you do it in front of your chest, and the mother does it, and she says the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, el Padre, el Hijo, el Espíritu Santo. And my mother would do this every time I left the house. She would do this. She was like, she had to do it. And she would tell me, que estés con Dios, be with God. Never forget God wherever you're at. Never forget God wherever you're at. And this is the remembrance of God, dhikr, the remembrance of God. So she would tell me this, never forget, always where you're at, don't forget God. And I can never remember once my mother ever saying, there is no God, or God doesn't exist, or no matter how bad or how many problems there was, I can never remember saying, you know what, just God doesn't exist, till now. And Hispanics are not, they have a strong sense of belief, and that they're closer to the natural disposition of belief in God. And so that's the first point. The second point is a lot of Islamic qualities,
cultures and
language.
And
Like example is pantalon. Pantalon is a derivation from Arabic root. Pantalon, almohada, jabón. I think they say camisa.
Right.
And there's like a word that ojalá. Ojalá, that means it translates exactly to inshallah, but it means hopefully in Spanish. But it has ojalá in the word. And so a lot of those must have seeped in from Muslim Spain, because Muslims were in Spain for 800 years, so it must have seeped in the culture. And the third is Islam it makes sense. Every convert, Hispanic convert, non-Hispanic, says, you know what, this just makes sense. The oneness of God, there's no contradictions. The Holy Trinity is kind of confusing. And in conclusion, I think that Hispanics recognize these points of that the strong belief in God, the oneness of God, these similarities in Islam, and that they're more likely to convert to Islam. So that's what I've concluded.
Just one point I want to, if we can elaborate. You mentioned regarding hospitality and like the language. How many of you, just by show of hands, if you don't mind, were familiar with this, that a good percentage of Spanish is actually derived from Arabic? How many of you, just by show of hands? Okay, so there are many that don't know. And I had the situation, this actually happens to me many times. Part of our outreach effort here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County in Anaheim is that we go to schools, we go to colleges, we go to universities, churches, etc. And we give them like an Islam presentation, what Islam is all about. And I was just recently, actually just a few weeks ago, we had a presentation at a predominantly Hispanic-based high school. And when this topic came up, being that majority of them were Hispanic, I asked them, I said, you know, how many of you know that a good percentage of Spanish actually comes from Arabic? You know how many of those people raised their hands? Very few, very few, very few. And there could be obviously many reasons for that, right? But that's something I think as Muslims, that's a great way to do outreach or da'wah. Specifically to somebody from a Hispanic background, to actually let them know that, you know what, your roots actually might be going back to España or Spain, which was controlled by Muslims for almost 800 years. Can you imagine that? But sometimes we have no idea about this. You know, he mentioned a few words, camisa, camis. You say, like usted, out of respect, we'll say ustad. Azúcar, azúcar, pantalón. There's so many different words, and there's like a whole list. I wish we had the time for it too, but just know, and especially if you have people that, like neighbors or co-workers that are of the Hispanic background, really kind of inform them about this in a very polite and a gentle way, if we can. Kenny, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And the other thing you mentioned, very important, was the fitrah. Fitrah being the natural state or disposition that one is born into, recognizing that there has to be a creator and the oneness of this creator. And I think it makes a lot of sense that you mentioned within the Hispanic culture and the cultures, that many people resonate to that, just because they have a strong understanding of God from a young age, right? That's a beautiful thing. Thank you for that. Let me come on this side. I'll throw it to you, Sister Wanda. The same question. In your opinion, being you have a Puerto Rican background, so you know Kenny has a Mexican background. You have a Puerto Rican background. Maybe it's a little bit different, maybe not. Why do you think so many Hispanics are accepting Islam?
Well, in general, people are always seeking for the truth and the purpose to life. In Puerto Rico, the majority are Catholic, like he said, as also Catholic. And I feel like, well, in Islam, we believe that God revealed the three main books, which is the Jewish book, the Torah, the original text of the Bible that no longer exists now, and then the final book, which is the Quran, which Muslims believe as well. And it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When it comes to the Bible, the original text of the Bible, there's a lot of similarities because the Bible had come down during the time of Jesus, peace be upon him. So in Catholic, we kind of, follow the example of Jesus and the story of the Virgin Mary, which she, gave birth to Jesus miraculously, as a miracle, and the miracles of Jesus as well. So when it comes to the original text of the Bible, there's a lot of things my mom grew up Catholic, and sometimes when I want to talk to her about Islam now, she's better. She's more accepting to me speaking to her and things like that. Alhamdulillah, she's doing really good. But when I speak to her now, I'm able to, show her the Quran and, explain to her, like, in the Quran, we also believe in Jesus as a prophet and the miracles and of the Virgin Mary. And alhamdulillah, like, thanks to God that she's able to understand that. Even my mom growing up as a Catholic, she used to enter the church, and when she entered the church, she would wear her veil. She always wore her veil when she entered the church, which is like a scarf. And that's why even my grandma did the same thing. When she entered the church, she would wear her veil. And that's why I think for a lot of Hispanics, it's easy for the Muslim women to wear the scarf. It's easier for us as Hispanics to wear the scarf because we kind of grew up with that, in the Catholic Church. We've seen that with the nuns as well. The nuns, they cover, they wear,
Virgin Mary, when you see
and the Virgin Mary, the image of Virgin Mary as well. So it's
Jesus with the beard, right?
Exactly. So I think that we can relate to that. So also I feel like when it comes to mannerism, like he said, tradition and mannerism, in Islam we're taught to respect the elderly. And that's the same thing with the Hispanic culture. We respect the elderly. We keep up with family ties. We're very close to our family. And I think that also has a lot to do with, in Islam we have to do that as well. So as a Hispanic, that's part of the tradition. You keep up with your family ties. You do your best to do good to your parents. You do your best to do good with your family. And that's also ties in with Islam, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Thanks
Perfect,
to God.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you and bless you. Sister Zara, if I can ask you the same question. Now you have a Costa Rican background.
Right.
So I don't know if it's different or not. Do you think, like what Sister Wanda said and even what Kenny said regarding family and hospitality, does that play a huge role? Do you think other factors might play a huge role?
Yes, I do believe that plays a huge role, in the Latin community. It's mostly, in Costa Rica, it's mostly primarily Christian. And it does take a lot of that passion. As Latinos, we're very passionate by nature. It's in our blood. And from a very young age, we're very faith-based. My parents were very faith-based. And there's a lot of similarities in that, it is in Islam like it is in Christianity, and also as in the Latin culture. I think also what has a lot to do with it, I think, is our times today. We just see a lot of, with everything in the media and everything, hate kind of brewing, and with the new presidency, Donald Trump coming into inauguration, it's questioned a lot. I mean, at least personally for me, kind of the essence of, what's the purpose of all of this, and not getting those questions answered, in the faith that, that I was, practicing Christianity before. So it raises a lot of questions, and we have a lot of unfulfilled, questions unanswered. And so it leaves us very much astray with, wondering like what if, and questioning a lot of things, especially in Christianity. We're just left with this faith of wanting to fulfill and love a God, but not knowing where to place it and where to put it. you know? And so I think that because with the media and everything that's coming out, it sparks as human nature a curiosity as to finding out, you know, what is Islam, at least for me it was, you know, what is Islam all about anyways, you know, and you kind of get to, once you start doing the research and start realizing, especially in the Latin community, you're like, oh, you know, it really wasn't all about what the media is portraying, but it's like there's something there, you know, and now there's like, and then there's answers, you know, and it kind of fulfills that, you know, that faith that's lacking that maybe not necessarily is not getting, you know, informed through, you know, through other, you know, religions. And so I think it has, you know, a lot to do with that, and also culturally too. Like, you know, the mannerisms and the respect we have to our elderlies, to our parents, you know, very similar, very, very similar. So like for me, the transitioning, for me reverting over is just like, you know, it was very easy in that respect.
So something like what Sister Wanda said,
Yeah.
in the sense of a transition, like for example, you used the headscarf.
Right.
It was an easy transition for you to actually wear the hijab. So you're saying almost the same thing, being that even curiosity, you're wanting to know more about something to fulfill the questions that you have of life. Islam was an easy transition for that.
It was an easy transition. The modesty, because that's
Okay.
kind of how it was with I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, so that modesty of covering was huge. So here it was like, okay, that's something I can relate to. Not that I was a very practicing, you know, Christian by all means, but this is what I was instilled as a very young child.
Okay.
So it just hasn't really gone away.
Okay, perfect. Alhamdulillah. Brother Isa, I'm going to ask you the same question. And maybe if from your perspective, you can give us some insight, even inside prison. We find many people actually accepting Islam in prison, specifically Hispanics. So this is not just a dynamic, you know, just like outside of the prison yard. It's actually the same situation inside prison. We're finding many people actually accepting Islam. We actually, because we're getting so many requests, I'm not sure if you folks know, here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County, we have a prison outreach program called Linked Outside. How many of you are familiar with this program, just by a show of hands? Okay, Link Outside is actually a program that works with our local prisons and jails and institutions to kind of help the Muslims out inside the prison system. So whether it's pen paling, meaning writing letters, whether it's actually going for visits, which we try to do, and then the re-entry process, the moment somebody leaves the prison or the jail or that type of lifestyle, what are the options, right? So here at the Islamic Institute, we have that. We have actually a functioning outreach program under Link Outside. So if those of you, if you're interested, what I would encourage everyone to do is to make sure you sign up outside. Since we're on this, I'm just going to put in a little footnote as well. We have a very strong, alhamdulillah, very strong outreach program here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County. Some of the outreach that we do, we actually go into the local malls. Some of you might have seen us you're like, what are you guys doing? So we go to actually malls and we set up tables like this, outreach tables, with like a beautiful design like this, as you guys can see, right? And we have, we pass out free Qur'ans and pamphlets about Islam, and we just have a good conversation with people. To do what? Open up the lines of communication. You'll be surprised at the amount of positive response we get from people that are walking by. I'm talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people coming in and out of the mall, just looking at Muslims with the, you know, the sign that says, I love Jesus because I'm Muslim. Yes, I'm trying to make sure that everybody, we're trying to brand it in, right? But this is amazing. It's amazing. So for those of you, if you're interested, we have a Hispanic outreach team as well. That what we do is we do outreach in Spanish. So we'll go to areas that are predominantly Hispanic and we start to talk to them, right, in Spanish about the message of Islam. So for those of you, if you speak the Spanish language, and you're comfortable, we have training, we do different types of workshops. I would love for you folks to get involved. And if you don't speak Spanish, it's okay. We have outreach to anybody, right? So our table is outside, you probably can't miss it. We have a sign-up sheet, just sign up. Put your name, put your email address. If you want to put your phone number, you're most welcome to. We have our outreach representatives that are standing by there, and we'll give you the training, inshallah, that you'll be comfortable then to go out and to start to talk to people about Islam, right? And if you haven't as of yet done so, I would highly recommend you to come, at least check it out, inshallah. So Brother Isa, sorry, I want to put it right to you, inshallah, the same hefty question as how Kenny said. Why do you think so many Hispanics are accepting Islam?
My answer would be that it is the divine time and calling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that there's a lot of people out there that are looking for guidance. They're searching for guidance. They're praying for guidance. From within the prison walls, I believe I was fortunate to be in there, you know. Unfortunately, I was in there, but I was fortunate to be in there because I became who I am today, alhamdulillah. But from in there, there's a lot of Hispanics that are coming to Islam in there, and they're, you know, gang members, all that stuff, ex-gang members, all right? I used to be a gang member, and I gave that life up for Allah, alhamdulillah. And I think that a lot of them were searching for unity and the brotherhood within Islam. And within the prison walls, we are really, really tight. We do prayer on the yard. We do prayer wherever, it doesn't matter. And we spend a lot of time with each other. We do a lot of ta'leems. We do a lot of group programs. And, you know, in there's a lot of brothers that don't have anybody. They don't have no money. They don't have any books. So that's what they really need help with in there as well. For me, in my life, being the man that I was looking for the unity, the brotherhood, and also the structure within Islam. The structure within Islam being that within Islam we have to know that it's time for prayer, it's time to do wudu. We have to be mindful that we cannot do this, we cannot do that. And we are no longer from gangs, you know, because if you believe in Allah, then that is the only one that you believe in, that's the only one that you trust, and that's the only one that you call upon. You don't call upon homeboys because homeboys can't do what Allah can do for you. Alhamdulillah.
I appreciate that. So, you know, just to maybe sum up some of the responses that we're getting, and I think this is some of the responses maybe even you folks had. That being, in no particular order, the concept of a fitrah, a natural disposition to acknowledge when it's brought to your attention that the Creator, there is a Creator, the existence of this Creator, meaning God, and the oneness of this Creator. Then if there is instructor, you need what? Instructions. If there's a Creator, surely He would not leave us to like wander without any type of instructions. It's kind of like, you know, like the first day of class or the first day of your job, your boss or your manager is going to give you, or your teacher is going to give you some type of instructions or a syllabus, right? What is the objective of that syllabus? Huh? You can just say it out loud. What's the
objective of the syllabus is for you to get materials prepared for the class.
Very good. So you have some type of understanding what that semester or quarter has, right? What to anticipate, right? Now, if your professor on the first day of class or your boss on the first day of class didn't give you a job description or some type of rules, would you know what to do? No, you would just make it up yourself. You'll be lost. Give that same example for life. There has to be a Creator, because when you look at design implies a designer. Are you with me? Design implies a designer. When you look at the perfect balance of the universe, surely you should come to a conclusion that there has to be a Creator that created all this, and surely this Creator has to be one. And surely if He created all of us, He must have given us some instructions. This is why you find the stories of many new Muslims and people right now. As I'm speaking to you, we have maybe people in the audience, people that are watching us live streamed, people that might watch this video years from now, still searching for their purpose of life. The question is, what are you and I going to do about it? They could be your neighbors, they could be your co-workers, they could be your family members, right? So you have to do your best to be, number one, informed about Islam, and number two, to present this message of Islam, right? So this is a very important thing. And being that we're on this note, as Muslims, and even as our guest here, it's very important to know about the message of Islam, right? And unfortunately, sometimes within some communities, there's a lack of proper Islamic knowledge. I think we can all agree to that to an extent. But here at IIOC, we believe in not only educating and informing the community, but the application process, as I talked about earlier. We have a university that we established here. Most of you might hear or have heard of this university called Cal Islamic University, right? Or used to be known as CIS, College of Islamic Studies. How many of you, again by show of hands, are familiar with Cal Islamic University? Okay, if you're not familiar with Cal Islamic University, I think you really need to get informed about this and try to join it. What it is it's something that Sheikh Mustafa Umar, our Imam here, and also some of the representatives here, they developed. And this is a university of Islamic sciences. So you learn about theology, you learn about hadith, the statements of the Prophet, peace be upon him. You learn about lives of all the prophets along in the Quran and the Bible. It's a beautiful class that's being taught this quarter right now, and we bought an extension of our mosque just about a mile down the road. This is where we're having many of these classes. So for those of you, if you want to further your Islamic knowledge, I would highly encourage you to do so, so that when questions like this are given to you, or somebody asks you about Islam, you know how to respond in a very systematic and beautiful and professional way. How you do that? You have to have knowledge. You can only get so far with whatever we've known since like the 3rd grade weekend school, kind of, one of those things. We have to further our knowledge. I remind myself and you. So if you are interested, I would go to Cal Islamic University, or you can see the, the pamphlets and information that we have outside on the shelves, inshallah. So having said that, we have a few other questions before we turn it over to you guys, the audience, and something that I wanted to also ask, inshallah, being that we tackle some of the questions. Another one, before we hand it over, I wanted to ask regarding action items. Like, what type of advice would, Wanda, if I can start with you, what type of advice would you give to our maybe new Muslim Hispanic community and those that are maybe non-Muslim looking into Islam? What would you say? What advice or suggestions?
Well, I would bring up 2 main points, which would be, first of all, which is da'wah, which is the outreach part, the invitation part, and then the second part would be knowledge. Knowledge is very important. I feel that as a community, what he said, the dawah table, passing out pamphlets is really good. Now, Brother, he also has a Spanish dawah team. Language is very important. So spreading the word of Islam, answering questions to non-Muslims, and answering questions of non-Muslims if they have any questions in Spanish as well is really important. I've had the experience of going to traveling to different places like Mexico City, Tijuana, Rosarito. There's a masjid in Rosarito called Masjid Noor. Brother Pervez runs the masjid. I had a group of friends. We go down there. We bring a bunch of materials, the car full of materials. We pass out pamphlets in Spanish.
So you actually go to Mexico and you talk to the population there?
Yes, we
Very
did.
interesting.
We went to Rosarito. And we talked with the community there. Even there was a lecture going on, and I translated the whole lecture. The Imam, he's from Yemen. He gave a lecture in English, and I translated the whole lecture from English to Spanish for the women who were there. There were some non-Muslims and some Muslims. I also coordinated a Ramadan toy drive. Ramadan meaning the month of fasting. What we did was I fundraised to break the fast there, and a lot of Muslims and non-Muslims were there. We broke the fast together, and then I brought a van full of a bunch of toys, passed it out to the kids. I fundraised for food baskets for the needy families there, and we would give the mothers a food basket, the kids the toys, and just fundraise for a lot of Spanish material. We even had a lot of Spanish material shipped from Saudi. There's a sister who she was able to bring us some Spanish material from Saudi. So I feel like going to the people, going to Mexico, exploring there, there is a Masjid Omar in Tijuana as well.
It's actually a growing number of Muslims in Mexico
there's
itself.
A lot.
Right?
There's You would be amazed how much people make shahada every day. And there's so
shahada just being the declaration that somebody makes, right, when you're becoming a Muslim.
And there was a beautiful story of a woman that I heard that her son had passed away, and she was going through a life crisis, and Islam brought her the light that she needed. She converted to Islam. It helped her to cope with that, with her son passing. And that was a story that I never forgot. I stayed with my heart. And she was going through a hard time. When it comes to knowledge, I feel like it's important for us as a community to educate, not just the women, but also the men, especially the reverts, so that they're able to educate their children, so that their children can educate their children, and we can have, alhamdulillah, a knowledgeable group of Latino, Hispanic Muslim kids who can also invite and give dawah in Spanish. We're very grateful to have a lot of programs that are here at IIOC, which is the Coffee with the Sheikh, which are amazing. We also have a Sunday class, which is really good. Every Sunday we come, and a lot of women attend that, and that's also a way for us to go back home and teach our children what we learn. And we also have now what you said, the College of Islamic Studies. So I feel like it's really important to educate, and I feel like it's important to spread the word as much as you can.
Perfect, perfect. So we'll take one from the sister. Same question I'm going to pose here on the brother's side, just because of the sake of time. Kenny, I'm going to ask you the same question. Sister Wanda talked about like education and da'wah, informing people to both the Hispanic New Muslim community and the non-Muslim Hispanic community. What are your thoughts about that? Do you agree with that? Do you suggest something else? What would you say regarding that?
So what is the question is, so what is some advice you would give
what
to...
advice or suggestions would you give to both the Hispanic New Muslim community and maybe those that are not Muslim as of yet, or just kind of don't know anything about Islam as of right now?
So for the Hispanic New Muslim community, the new Hispanic, you're a new Muslim and you're a Hispanic community, I would advise to get a solid foundation in your Islam. And there's a lot of great institutions here to give you that foundation. There's a mentoring program that the outreach has here. So get a mentor. That's the first thing. If you converted to Islam, get a mentor and learn your prayer. That's really important. Second point I would say is after you finish your... so get a mentor. Second, attend the Sunday classes here or live stream them if you get a chance. You're able to live stream them on YouTube. And get that solid foundation. And third, after you progress, there's the Cal Islamic University. You can take some courses there and get a stronger foundation in Islamic studies and your belief and the stories of the prophets. So I would say first thing is get a solid foundation. That's important. When I converted to Islam, I didn't have beautiful, strong institutions that like they do here. I was in Corona. I just had Sheikh Mustafa, and he didn't have College of Islamic Studies. So
it was simmering in his mind at that time.
It was simmering in his mind.
Right, yes.
So I would say that's the first thing. For the non-Hispanic community, advice I would give them is I would encourage them to come to a mosque and to get a tour of the mosque. They do daily tours here at this mosque. You just have to make an appointment and you get a tour, get some questions answered about Islam and Muslims and misconceptions.
You bring up a good point regarding tours. Most of you probably know here at the mosque we actually offer guided tours of the mosque to non-Muslim guests that want to know more about Islam. We actually just had one today, being it was an inauguration day, right? And we're not going to go down that avenue right now in this lecture, but being that was inauguration day, we had a few churches that actually wanted to stand in solidarity with Muslims, and so they came here today. We had about 12 individuals that came, and when I got back to the office, we had another call from another local church that wanted to also support. So you'll be surprised at the amount of people that are showing support right now. So I would encourage you again, like one of the best ways to convey this message of Islam, to let people know what Islam is all about, invite them to the mosque. Right? As I said in the beginning, we promised them that you won't take them hostage, right? It'll be okay. They're just going to come and they're going to take a tour of the mosque and they're going to kind of see what Muslims are all about. This is one of the best ways because you open up those lines of communication. Kenny mentioned something, some services. So for the new Muslim community, regardless, right? If you're a new Muslim 20 years ago, you became Muslim yesterday, right? There's a few different services that we offer here specifically for new Muslims or people that are interested in Islam. First one is every Friday we have something called Coffee with the Sheikh. What this means is it's an open QA session. So anytime, when you accept Islam, you have a lot of questions, which is natural. So we need a platform with scholarship where we can kind of have that dialogue. And we have that here every Friday from 6:30 to 7:30. And we would love for other mosques and Islamic centers to duplicate this, right? And this, again, is a private setting for new Muslims and their mentors. Secondly, we offer consistent weekly classes every Sunday, like Islam 101 classes, to know about the basics of Islam. So right now, we're actually covering the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When you make the Shahada, which is a declaration to become Muslim, right? The declaration, the statement that you say, the first half is you declare that there's none to be worshipped but God, Allah. And what's the second half? Right. The Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. So we should probably know who the messenger of God is, right? So this is why in our Islam 101 class every Sunday for new Muslims and mentors, we try to tackle this. So right now we're about halfway through, so I want to congratulate, I know many of the students are here that are going through that, but for those of you that are not able to make it, maybe you're watching this and you're actually in, on the East Coast somewhere, or maybe you're in Mexico City. We have a strong group of Muslims back in Mexico City and different parts. You can always live stream it. by going on IIOC TV or IIOC New Muslim Group on YouTube channel, inshallah. So we have 2 different channels for that. And the third thing, very quickly, is one-on-one mentorship. So we have qualified mentors here that the moment somebody accepts Islam and they show a bit of commitment as far as they want a mentor, we try to plug them in within 24 to 48 hours. We try our best, right? And this is a strictly volunteer program. So right now, as it states, or as it is, I think we have close to 50 volunteers that are mentoring new Muslims. Some volunteers, I'm not going to name their names, they're mentoring not only one individual, 2, 3, 4. We have one mentor who's mentoring 5 sisters at one time right now. Can you imagine that? And they're just taking out maybe an hour out of the week, 45 minutes out, 2 hours. That time that you and I probably waste on watching TV or on Facebook, on Twitter, doing things that, are really maybe irrelevant, right? Imagine that time you can invest into doing things that are fruitful, not only in this life, but what? The life to come, the akhirah, the next life, right? So I remind myself and everybody here, inshallah. So because time is coming down, I want to make sure we have Q&A, but I wanted to just maybe finish with last-minute remarks. If I can give each of you 1 minute, if you can say in closing whatever you would like, advice, suggestions, kind of like similar to what we just mentioned right now, but we'll keep it open-ended. So I want to give everybody a chance. So let's start with you, Brother Isa. You didn't get a chance yet. In a minute or less, what advice or suggestion would you give to community here, somebody that's watching a live stream, or maybe years from now they're going to watch this lecture? What would you have to say regarding this topic or anything at hand?
For the Hispanic Latino community, I would suggest that we need to learn everything not only in English, Arabic, but also in Spanish. We need to be able to bring our family to Islam, inshallah. And I was searching YouTube the other day, and on YouTube right now, there's no Spanish teaching teacher right now that you can go to learn in Spanish. And that's unfortunate, but inshallah, maybe one of us today could be that one that does teach. And I remind myself. And something else I wanted to say is that we must remember that we're all being seen not only by Allah, but by everybody that surrounds us every day. And we got to make sure that we're doing the right thing, because it's that one thing that could make somebody else come to Islam. And it's that one thing that you do that can make somebody not want to come to Islam. So we need to be mindful of that, inshallah, and do the right thing and forbid what is wrong, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Perfect. Brother Isa brings up a really good point, and that is just being mindful and cautious, right? And very welcoming, I would say, at the mosque. And sometimes we have, and I mentioned this a few times, I'm sure many of you have different challenges that if you're a new Muslim, maybe you visited some Islamic centers and certain things might have happened. So as a community, I remind myself and everybody here, the moment somebody enters the double doors of the mosque, you have to make sure that you're welcoming. Okay? You have to make sure, because imagine if you're the individual that makes them turn around and go back outside the mosque. What will you say on the Day of Judgment? And you don't know anything about this individual. So I'm going to just, if you don't mind, Brother Isa. Brother Isa, it's pretty visible he has some tattoos, right? And myself and Isa, we talked about this. Now, if he comes to that mosque, there's a chance somebody's going to say something, right or wrong. Right. And it's unfortunate because you don't know this brother's history. You don't know his heart. You don't know where he's coming from. 17 years he did in prison. You know the sacrifices my brother gave? We don't know, but we're the first ones to jump on him about something. Oh, akhi, you got to put a kufi, cover your head, or you got to do that. Did you even ask him his name? And I'm sure it's the same with the sisters. The sister walks in, maybe she doesn't have hijab because she has no idea. We had this, it happens, right? So what I'm trying to say is I'm not picking on any specific community or any specific person. What I'm trying to do is, remind myself and everybody here, anybody that comes inside the mosque, irrelevant of who they are, new Muslim, recommitted, whatever the term is, right? Be welcoming. Just like you would be welcoming in any other setting, at the mosque it should be even more than that, inshallah, right? So I remind myself and everybody here, I appreciate you asking Brother Isa. Kenny, I'm going to ask you the same question in the 1 minute, if you can. What are some last minute thoughts that you have?
So some last minute thoughts. I would say, first to the audience, I would encourage them to become a mentor if you feel like you're ready to become a mentor. And second thing, I would encourage everyone to invite your friends, your neighbors, Hispanic or non-Hispanic, to get a tour of the mosque and get that exposure. You'll be surprised how much it will change their life. And second, I would advise a new Muslim, especially Hispanic, to never let go of their prayer. I remember when I converted to Islam, that's the one thing that I'd never let go, prayer. And that got me strong in
The daily
Iman.
prayers you're talking about.
Yeah, the daily prayers that a Muslim does, the obligatory prayers. Never let go of that. And third, for those watching that aren't Muslims, I would advise them that if they are searching for the truth, to make dua and to sincerely make dua and ask Allah, sincerely guide me to the truth, and He's going to guide you if you ask sincerely. So that's what I advise to anybody watching that's not Muslim, to just ask and make dua.
And dua being like
Dua,
a
supplication,
reaching
yes.
out to the Creator. Okay, very good, very good. I'm going to pass it this way on the right. Sister Zara, same question. In a minute or so, what last minute thoughts do you have?
I'd like to address it over with the sisters. One thing that I found that might help through my experience is when I reverted over, how much I found comfort in my modesty. Right before I reverted, that was one of the things that was holding me back, is to be covered and wearing hijab, and how that, could possibly bring a hindrance to my life. And I used to have that mentality, how, especially in the Western culture of ours, sexuality and the social websites put an emphasis on, perfectionistic mentality, and also sexuality as leading pretty much as the forefront for women. And because I came and I grew up in that, mentality and in this culture, I found it really hard to let that go. But when I reverted over, I found, alhamdulillah, comfort. I loved myself. It's like this self-awareness of feeling confident and self-assured, and that my self-esteem actually rose much higher because of guarding, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to, guard our adornments, And I found myself, finding myself precious, because Allah sees us like His gem, and covering up that preciousness that Allah has, ordered us to do, is now what I find so special about myself, And now that I love all of me, and I represent Islam, it's a beautiful thing to come see it on the other side now that I am not half naked as I used to be, and I'm much more confident than I ever was. And how much of that facade, social media does, kind of brainwashes into thinking that, we need to lead with something that is absolutely what we need to protect. It's a beautiful thing. And so that to me is something that I like to share, is that it was the complete opposite for me. And I love it, and I love the fact that, and one great example is that now, the difference between then and now is that I generally get, when I'm at the grocery store, if I'm or anywhere that I am, I generally get women, especially just women, come up to me and they say, "You are just so beautiful, all of you." And I find it funny because they're trying to acknowledge that my hijab and me being covered, they find it beautiful. Whereas in the past, like I got this false sense of, confidence of being gawked at for the wrong reasons. And now it's like I feel protected. Everyone is being forced to acknowledge me for my intelligence, what I have to offer, what I represent, my faith. And so I protect it, and I love it, and it's something that, alhamdulillah, I would have never had if it wasn't for Islam and Allah in my life. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. May Allah bless you. Sister Juan, I'm going to ask you the same question as we conclude, inshallah.
I would just elaborate on what she said.
Okay.
I would say the same thing. Modesty is liberating. It's not oppressing. And I feel that if we can encourage our sisters to be more modest, that would be one of the advice that I would give. And also, I really believe in educating our children. I think it's important to educate our children and to keep them strong in the ummah so they can be proud to be Muslims.
Perfect, perfect. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you and bless you all. At this time, what I wanted to do, if it's okay, I wanted to open it up to the audience for any questions. So I'm going to grab just this mic here, Sister Zara. Brother Fuad, if you can help me out. If you can kindly not, please listen to the rules of Q&A, please. We're going to pass this mic around. I ask you, if you're going to ask a question or give some advice or suggestions, please make it 10 seconds or less. If it's more than 10 seconds, then you have to be up here talking. And we don't have the time for that, right? So we're going to do it 10 seconds or less. Please make sure to get, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but because we want to get to everyone's question. For those of you that have a question, please kind of get right to your question or your suggestion or your feedback. Maybe you're a new Muslim yourself. You want to share something, you're most welcome. So if you just want to raise your hands, that'll be great. I saw Brother, I think Omar in the back there. Brother Fuad, we can pass it there. If you can just state your question. And if you can kind of direct your question to who you want to answer that question. Of course, yeah. Comment, suggestion, advice, question, you're most welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I just wanted to say that I don't think it's a coincidence that like this event is a thing. And I think it isn't a coincidence that Trump happened to alienate both like Latino and Hispanic and Muslim communities. And I think it's even just so funny, even just this morning, I believe this masjid IIOC joined a collaborative to like foster better community building between Muslims and Latino communities within Anaheim. Right. So there's like a press conference just this morning, and I think it's like on this Channel 7 News or something like that. So to me, it's not a coincidence at all, and I just wanted to share that with you and show that, you know, I think it's very easy for Latino communities to build bridges with the Muslim community. It just seems, it's exactly as I walked in when Kenny was saying that, it's just natural. You know, it just feels very natural.
Right. I appreciate it. May Allah bless you. Let's take one for the sister side. So we're anybody on the sister side, just all you have to do, we have a sister up here, Brother Fuad, InshaAllah. Sorry, budget cut, so we have one mic that's going around, so just bear with us.
Assalamu alaikum.
I'm going to get fired after today, so sorry. Just kidding, please. Sir.
Yeah, I just have a little advice for our own community, for Muslim community. Whenever you see a foreign face in your community, you should run and welcome that person. Yes. And especially don't speak with on your language only. Because I see a lot of sisters, mostly sisters and brothers as well, I've noticed. They keep on speaking their language and they ignore the person who doesn't understand the language. And this is really, really, they feel hurt. Sometimes they might feel they're talking about them.
Right, right.
So the second thing I would like to say is we should all open our homes and invite our neighbors. We have big parties, we invite all our friends and families, but we never invite the neighbors. And neighbors are the most important thing to invite.
Right.
If we invite our neighbors, and we have 3 neighbors, if we have 1 million Muslims, if we have 3 neighbors, we can change the mind of 3 million neighbors.
Right.
So I think it's very important.
May Allah bless. Sisters and brothers, you guys want to add to that? Did you want to add to the statement? Sister, one of you guys can share the mic here, if you guys wanted to.
When you're talking about neighbors, what I also do sometimes is I make like invitation packages, which are like dawah packages, and it has like pamphlets, some kind of candies and stuff in there, like a mug or something. And then on the day of Eid, like a holiday, or during the Ramadan, then we pass it out to our non-Muslim neighbors, which is another way of also inviting and talking to non-Muslims about Islam. So that's an example that we can set when she said, be good to your neighbors. Inviting them in the house, cooking something for them, you know, giving them a gift.
Actually inviting them to your home. Yes.
Yeah, inviting them to your home.
Break the bread, yes.
Yeah,
you know, the biryani and the curry, you want to make sure,
Yeah, inviting them to your home.
If you want to yes, yeah. You can invite me as well. I'll be very honored to come and privileged.
Yeah, cook something for them, invite them to your home.
Posole, halal posole, or so, you know.
Give them a gift, you know. That's so.
Right, inshallah. Yeah. I'm going to throw this to brothers. Do you want to add to that? The welcoming part? Okay, Brother Isa, you guys good? Okay, no problem. Let's move on to, we have a brother here, inshallah, Brother Fuad. My brother with the beautiful beanie, who I'm admiring with the beanie, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. So this question is for whoever would like to join in, and the more the better in this one. So I was born and raised Muslim. My parents are from Afghanistan though. So we have a heavy cultural mixture that comes with the religion. My parents clash in that regards, where although I was born Muslim, I have a cultural clash where I try to filter out what's not part of Islam, and then what's part of Islam. Now, being that you guys are new Muslims, your clash is much more difficult than what I'm dealing with, where you're dealing with people that, let's be honest, judgmental people, people who come look, and you mentioned a little bit about entering the masjid, right?
Right.
That the biggest thing, every time that people looked at the Prophet ﷺ was, he doesn't have the face of a liar, people described, or they compared his face to the moon, and they would look and someone was asked, is the moon more beautiful or his face? Ultimately, it's just the impression that we give out. But how do you guys truly deal with filtering out the difference between not getting turned off by Islam when you guys first entered? Because I can't imagine how many times you guys would have turned off like, well, that's the religion, or Islam is this way, but these people are doing this.
Right.
So what's the truth? You get, is my question understood?
Yeah.
So
Who wants to take this? It's a great question. Isa?
I would say that's where the studying comes in, you know. You have to study what you believe. A lot of people say that they're Christian. They say that they're Muslim. They say that they're whatever belief that they are. But if they are not living their belief, you know, and Allah knows best, then I think that is the most important thing, to live what you believe and to do what you believe, you know. And that is practicing Islam to its fullest, not worrying about what the next person thinks. That was a big thing for me. I used to always worry about what other people thought, what other people said, and what. Once I put that to the side, you know, and it is by Allah that I put that to a side, you know, and alhamdulillah, you know, I have come to continue praying wherever I can lay my forehead at. That's where I lay it at. And I know that Allah is watching my back, and I don't have nothing to worry about. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I wanted to answer that too. I think for me that what has helped me a lot is the fact that I put my trust in Allah. I know that when I reverted over, I experienced very quickly, and I said this in my, when I was explaining my bio, was that being Muslim, which is an honor and a pride that I take, it's not going to be roses and bunnies. It just is not, and it wasn't for me. You know, my family pretty much excommunicated me, and I received a lot of hatred because of that from my family and friends. I pretty much had to start all over, and it's a very lonely road in the beginning, but and very discouraging at times. But what has helped me immensely is to continue drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Realizing that I will be tested, and I will be tested because Allah loves me. And that's what continues my heart to continue going on the right path. Because there's many times that I could get very discouraged and just say, oh, this isn't for me, and I'm just, because I was the type of person where I go full front, like all the way, but if anything comes in my way, or if I just feel that I got swayed, I would give up. And this is one thing that I just could never give up. This is one thing when I took my shahada that I would never give up. And so one thing that keeps me going is that I have received a lot of difficulty and obstacles, but inshallah, I just continue praying, I just continue going, and Allah is a turner of hearts. He really is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anytime when I feel like I'm pushed to a corner, I don't know how, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He switches my heart, and I just feel like I can go one more day. I can go one more day. And that's what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me here, and that's what keeps, me and my daughter, going, and that's what has helped me.
Did you want to add, Wanda?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to say that the thing that has kept me going is that Islam is a way of life. And I always just remember that it's a way of life. And that's just what keeps me going. Every day I remember that that's how I have to live my life. That's the way that I know. And I actually that's just what she said. Always go back to Allah, turn back to God, and always remember that Islam is a way of life.
Very good. Let's take a, yes, sister.
I wanted to make a comment on.
Sorry, yes, if you can quickly make a comment.
I wanted to say first, I know you mentioned the Afghan culture and Islam. It's a bit different because there's a lot of intertwined between Islam. I might be incorrect, but that's what I know, between Islam and culture. So you kind of have to distinguish sometimes. I would say the answer to that is get a solid foundation in your Islamic studies. I remember when I've taken extensive classes at Cal Islamic, and one of the things that helped me the most was Islamic law. Taught you what not to do, what to do, what's haram, what's halal, so I always kept that in my cultural background. Like, oh, sorry, Mom, I can't eat pork with this pozole. You know, I can't eat pork with this tamales. Sorry, Mom, sorry. And like, you know, beer, intoxicants, all these, I can't do it. And second, I showed it through my actions. I showed it through my actions, through my family members, or to my friends. I brought him to the mosque. I remember bringing my friend to Ramadan, and he's you know what, man, I want to pray with you. And he prayed with me. He prayed with the whole congregation. I was like, man, you're not Muslim, and you know this. But he's like, nah, man, I want to pray anyways. And he prayed. So I thought I would say a solid foundation in Islamic studies, Islamic law and prayer and all these things.
Thank you so much. Sister had a, yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, welcome to Islam. Your journey is very amazing. I'm sure it's not easy. But my question is for Zahra and Brother Isa. I work with the babies, you know, and then my question is, you know, having been in, you know, drugs and alcohol, from medical perspective, the children go through so much withdrawal and pain. How did you get comfort when you, you know, went to Islam? Did you have to go through withdrawal? What did you do, you know, get recover? Yeah.
Well, for me, I went to treatment. You know, I went to treatment, and at that time, I had lost, you know, my daughter because of my actions. They were vile. I was just not a good person, and I knew that when I had sobriety, you know, when I had left the drugs and the alcohol and the partying and all of it, because I was a wild child, and I took pride in that. You know, and I was successful, and you know, everything that comes with that. I lost my daughter because of it, you know, and it got to a point where I started losing things now. You know, I had reached it on, then I started losing things, and then at that point, you know, I realized I was very angry at my family and her father that took her away from me and everything else I had taken away. But then I realized when I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, and when I got in sujood position, when I didn't even know that was prayer, is that I needed to lose it all in order to appreciate what I had, you know, and had to take a breaking down, a humiliation in a sense for me, in order to soften my heart again and go from the very cold, numbed. I'm so numb that nothing could penetrate it, not even my daughter. That it was a process to get me to a place where her father, you know, took care of my daughter, and it got to a place where I started, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started gifting me back what I had destroyed for years, you know, and I got my daughter back, and luckily I was in treatment for like 3 months in order for me to get off of it. But I realized very quickly that my yearning to get sobriety came hand in hand with Islam. You know, even in treatment, they were, you know, kind of wanting me to, they pushed away Islam from me, and they were pushing in more their program and AA and NA, you know, kind of like their way of treatment. And I knew that, and I pushed it back because I wanted Islam, you know, and that's what I gravitated to. And I still gravitate to that. There's moments where, you know, there's moments where I still crave, you know, going out, and that's just a test from shaitan, you know, that's just Shaitan's whispers, and I can see it. Now I can see it a mile away. It's like, I catch you, I see you, you know? and this time, I more than anything, I kind of laugh at it because I know the risk. I've been there. And I don't ever want to go back. And that is the gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me, is my daughter back, you know, my life back. And a community, an ummah, where I feel closer and I draw much more closer to Allah. So that process of withdrawals, yes, it comes with it, but the love of Allah surpassed everything, surpassed it all. I can't explain it. It's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And that's what really, for me, helped with letting that lifestyle go and complete 180 and become a Muslim.
Do you find comfort from Quran and prayer if you think about it?
If it's okay, we'll have the brother respond, inshallah.
Okay. For me, I remember everything that I lost. You know, I lost a life. a lot. I lost 17 years of my life. I got busted when I was 22 years old. I was unfortunately, unable to be a father to my son and my daughter. And I recently had my daughter, me and my daughter are talking again, alhamdulillah. But when I was in prison, I lost my son. I lost my son 8 months after I became Muslim. And I thank Allah because even though I lost my son, I found Islam and I found Allah, and that was one of the biggest and hardest things for me when I was in prison, losing my son. He was 21 years old, and he was shot in the street, and may he rest in peace. But the outlet for me was during prayer. When I was in prison, I was able to pray, and when I would do prayer, that was when I cried, and that was when I was on my knees, and I was praying to Allah for strength, and I was praying that Allah will continue to guide me. And there is nothing in the world that would make me go back to drugs. I see people out here today, and they're still drinking and doing drugs and having a ball, thinking that that's life. That is not life. That is not why Allah put us here. But for me, I will not return to that lifestyle, and because I know everything that I lost, and I thank Allah for guiding me to Islam, and I thank Allah for me being here today. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khairan. I think we have time for maybe one last question. So do we have, I saw one hand in the back there. Sister Sumayya, inshallah. Let's take this as the last question if it's okay, because it's getting close to 9:30. Again, the speakers are here. If afterwards you want to ask any private questions, I think, are you guys okay if they come up and maybe ask some questions? Okay, inshallah. Just I want to respect everyone's time here. So Sister Sumayya, if you had the last question, we'll...
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to share 3 things very quickly.
Okay, I'm timing you right now.
Okay.
So, I'm just kidding.
Number 1, for all my beautiful sisters that are wearing the scarf, be really proud of what you're carrying. Like when you go out on the street, when you go in the store and you see this, especially when you see any Latinos, always say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Buenos días. Be happy that you are Muslim and you're carrying your scarf. Because when people see us outside, it's not like, oh, what's Islam? The first thing they think is like, oh, I know about you guys. I hear about TV or whatever. So it's our job to carry ourselves with dignity. We need to be proud, not arrogant, but proud of who we are. Carry a smile on your face, and always start the conversation first. Because people don't know you. Most of the time people say oh, you speak Spanish, you learn Spanish really well. So right there you can just break a stereotype. Now, how can we do that? How can we carry ourselves with proud, That's my point number 2. So number 2, try to get the connection with Allah through the Quran. Even if you have a busy life, just in the morning, start your day with the Quran. Even if it's just one ayah, but you know that when you go outside, you have somebody higher that's protecting you and that's taking care of you. And my point number 3 is that, in your class, we learned about the story of Jafar when he went to talk to the king of Abyssinia. I relate to that when it comes to our families or anybody that criticizes us. We could just relate to that. We were living our life in darkness. We were living a life of ignorance. We didn't know about who God was. And Islam came and took us out from the darkness to light. So I just want to share that with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Allah bless you. Thank you so much. When we were putting this program together, it was something that we really wanted to do. As you see, we have a series of these, right? We've done 4 or 5 different topics, trying to be creative, but trying to really inform people about just the work of da'wah, outreach, and talking to people about Islam, which is very important, inshallah. So I hope today we gave a few snapshots. Again, we can't do justice to the topic because each of these stories, I'm sure you can write volumes about, right? So I highly encourage you, if you haven't as of yet, make sure to introduce yourself afterwards, after we conclude with the sisters and the brothers with the brothers, right? But at the same time, we have to have some action items, or I wouldn't be doing justice at all, right? That is that, I don't know what else or how else to put it, but that we need to get involved with the greater non-Muslim community to educate and inform them about Islam, especially right now. Especially after today, right? Inauguration and everything, right? We have a table outside. Again, I won't go down that avenue, right? We have a table outside. I would love for everyone to sign up, if you feel comfortable and you want to, about going out and talking to people about Islam. Believe me, the first day we're not going to just throw you out and be like, okay, go talk to them. It doesn't work like that. There's training, there's some workshops, right? Slowly you get comfortable, but then you start to get so comfortable, you're like, you know what, I can do this, don't worry about it. I've worked with so many people that were literally like terrified or extremely shy. After a little bit of training, after observing, they felt real comfortable, so much so now that they can kind of manage a whole outreach table in the middle of a very busy mall by themselves. This is amazing, and this is by the permission of Allah. This is why, when you're sincere in what you're doing, especially in Islam, this is why when you look at the life of the companions, the Sahaba, right? Why do you think in a very short period of time, they reached China on one end, they reached Spain on the other end, North Africa, etc., so much so that Islam has entered here in Anaheim, California? Why do you think? You think they're sitting back and just watching? Do you think they're just like twirling their thumbs and just kind of saying, you do it? No, they were proactive. And this is something I remind myself and everybody here, sometimes we lose track of that, of being proactive, of not only understanding what we learn, but to apply what we learn too. So again, I'm in the same boat. I remind myself and everybody here, be proud. Not arrogant, be proud with humility and humbleness of being a Muslim, one who serves and surrenders to the Creator, Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude, inshallah. May Allah bless you all. May Allah reward you all. I thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with us here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County. For those of you that are watching live right now, I really appreciate it. For those of you that might be watching this years from now, maybe you're thinking about Islam, or some of you in the audience that are thinking about Islam, really consider it. Sit down, speak to a knowledgeable Muslim, let them talk to you a little bit about the message of Islam. If you like some free literature about Islam, whether it's an English or a Spanish translation of the Quran, you can do so. Let us know. If you like some flyers or pamphlets about Islam, let us know. We'll be more than happy to give it to you, inshallah. May Allah reward you all, bless you all. Please don't forget to help us in the cleanup process. The chairs go in the chair rack, and everything else, just make sure you clean up. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr, innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.